Anu, so can we start?
Yes, let's roll.
Perfect. Good. Anu, so before we start, why don't you tell our attendees who are here a little about yourself first?
Okay, so I call myself an idiot because I did my engineering first and then figured what I really wanted to do. So I completed my engineering in 2005, worked for a software biggie, and I realized this is not for me. And I made a career switch. And once I had spent 8 years in that career, I had to take a sabbatical, and thus I switched to another career and I started writing. And there was a series of events. COVID hit, and I had to stop creating content because long form content was no more relevant. And I didn't want to create short reels. Everybody was making reels, and everybody had become an influencer during COVID. So I got back to my core of career coaching. And that's when I was introduced to storytelling because I just tried to connect the dots. Obviously, all of us had a lot of time to think during COVID. And I just thought that what all have I done in my life that I could connect the dots and create one product or service which I could tell people that I am an expert at. And that's how storytelling happened to me. So that's my story. And in the last 3 years that I have been working on actively on teaching storytelling, I have trained somewhere around 160, 170 speakers to craft their speeches and stories. I have conducted workshops addressing around 10,000, 11,000 people on storytelling. And, and I'm rolling now. I feel I'm rolling. I finally found the purpose of my life.
That is so nice to hear that someone's found the purpose of life. Very few of us do. I haven't. I hope I get there soon.
Time being,
Uh,
yes. For the time being, yes. For somebody who's changed 6 careers in life, you never know.
Good to know. All right. Before we go ahead, a little about myself. My name is Cedric Fernandez, and currently I'm the head of operations for this company called Engage HR. We're based in Goa, and we're an end-to-end HR company. We do everything from recruitment, staffing, payroll, consulting, and training. I have about personally 24, 25 years of work experience. Started off as a hotel management student, worked in that industry for a year, then switched in 2001 to the then starting up BPO industry. And I've been in that industry ever since. The last couple of years since I've been in Goa, it's been more human resource, it's been more people management, it's been more consulting, training. I love speaking. And I'm most comfortable when I have a mic and I have an audience in front of me. I love the feeling. I love the adrenaline rush that it brings when you're standing on the stage and you're always on your toes because people are judging how you stand, how you talk, what you say, and that's what does it for me. So I probably think that's my purpose in life, but never know. I'm still waiting to confidently say that that's my purpose in life. Uh, but then that brings me to where I want to go next with this. Since I said I love speaking, I know you do too, Anu, and we coincidentally met at TEDx, haven't we? Um,
Yes,
for all those
I
for all those
was
who
about
don't
to
know
say
that TEDx,
that.
yeah, for
I
all
was about
those who
to
don't
say
know,
that that's where I met you first, and I could figure out how excited you get when you have to get on stage. I remember the
yeah, that
discussion that you were having with your co-host about how to go about emceeing the event, and I could see the excitement.
I was excited. I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt that I wore for TEDx. I didn't realize that all the time. Uh, so that's where we met. For all those who don't know, TEDx happened very recently in Goa. TEDx Margao happened for the first time, and that's where Anu and me met. We were both individually training the speakers for TEDx who are actually going to be speaking at the TEDx Margao, and that's where we met each other, and we clicked, I guess. But Anu, can you tell us a little about how TEDx happened to you? Because I know you've been a TEDx speaker and now a TEDx coach as well. How did TEDx happen for you?
So, TEDx happening for me is a real story of manifestation. I could give a first-hand story of manifestation around it. It so happened that I was exploring speaking as a career. This was somewhere around 2020 when I had stopped blogging, creating long format content, and I had got into, exploring what other things I could do. And I came across this community called Professional Speakers Association of India. So it is a part of Global Speakers Federation and all that. So I became a member and I started exploring speaking as a career option. And as luck would have had it, the very next year, there was a TEDx Chowdhary, which was the standard license for Kolkata at that time. They had rolled out nominations asking for volunteers. And I said, if you aspire to get on a TEDx stage someday, it's best to explore the backstage. I've always been a backstage person, that if you know the mechanics backstage, you obviously know what is needed on the stage. So I volunteered, I got to be a part of the team, and that's where I started helping speakers with scripting their speeches. So that was my first TEDx event as a speaker coach. And we conducted two TEDx events, two Pecha Kucha events. And it was in December 2021 when we conducted our first event. And after I'd done my first event, I told the licensee, Mr. Lokesh Nathani, he was the licensee and the curator of the event, and I told him that I think I should be ready for a TEDx speech myself by December 2023. And he said, no, you could do it faster. And for some reason, I wasn't convinced. I thought I will need that much time to build up a body of work, build up some content, and claim the stage. Although I realize now that I was ready at that point of time, also with my existing body of work. But I did this. I set this timeline for me, December 2023. And in February 2024, I received a confirmation for my speaker's slot at TEDx Ludhiana, which I spoke on 6th of April 2024. So it is a true story of what you think eventually gets manifested. You invite that energy. So yeah, that's my story of getting on a TEDx stage.
That's really nice. I mean, there's something common between your story and what I decided to do as well. Ravi Kamboj, who's the curator for TEDx Margao, when I spoke to him about being a speaker, he said, "I'm sure you'll get there soon." And when he offered me the opportunity to be the host, I thought exactly what you said. You thought that if you eventually aspire to be a TEDx speaker, how better than get close to it as much. And I got pretty close. I got on the stage. He just said I was not a speaker, but I'll get there. But yeah,
Yes,
so
yes,
that's a really
definitely,
nice
definitely.
that's a really nice story. I mean, manifestation and what you think and how you got yourself there. And I really love the way you put it out as a story, in just telling a simple question and you answered it in a story. Does How important is storytelling in our life, Anu,
Thank
everyday
you,
life?
Stead. Yeah, good. Thank you, Stead, for asking this question because I want my mission in life is to tell everybody that you could solve all of your problems. You could achieve anything by just having a storytelling mindset. And stories, yes, if you could communicate, and when I say solve all your problems, I mean solve all your communication problems. If you could manage to gain that storytelling mindset, you will never ever fail any kind of communication. You can't go wrong with any communication. So that's the importance I feel storytelling holds in communication, in meaningful communication. And that includes all aspects of life. It could be your personal life, your relationships, your business communication, your communication that is required for career growth, career branding. So, yes, storytelling is the ultimate tool for that.
Thank you. Well, answered. You actually answered my question that was going to come probably fourth in line to you, which is, my question was going to be, since you already answered it, my question was going to be, Anu, we say we have a sales mindset. You say you have a people's person attitude or a people's person mindset. My question was going to be, is there a storytelling attitude that you need to have? And I think you answered that already. So that solves that question. But you also said that storytelling now plays an important role in your career building. How does that work?
So it's not only now, before I came into content creation, writing long format blog posts, I have worked as an HR for 8 years. And in these 8 years, I read through some 10,000 resumes, conducted 6,000 interviews. And I pose a question to you, Stead, that most of the times, let's say 80% of the times or 90% of the times, an interview starts with this one single question. And what is that question? Make a guess.
I just knew that was going to be a question, even though you said it. Tell me something about yourself.
Yes. So invariably, until you are in a second or third round of interview, in the first round of your interview, the first question is going to be tell us something about yourself. I have been fortunate enough in my life, and I did not have to go through too many interviews because every time I needed employment, it was through campus. So the first company I appeared for, I got selected. Whatever companies I appeared for, I got selected. And I must have appeared for what, four interviews or five? Four interviews, yes. Two on campus and two out of campus. And the question has been, tell us something about yourself. I have asked this question at least 5,670 times out of 6,000, right? And people don't have an answer to it. I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know which college you've come from. I don't want to know which city you grew up in. I want to know a
Really?
little more about you, something that's not on the resume. And if you could create a 300 word, because you have somewhere around what, 1 minute or 1.5 minutes to answer this question before I get impatient and want to ask the next question, those 1.5 minutes, an average person's speaking speed is somewhere around 150 words if you're more articulate, or else it's somewhere around 200 words if you really want to be very quick. So if you could create a 200 word story, you could actually tell something interesting about your life in that 1.5 minutes. So that's
Very
one
interesting.
thing. That's one thing.
While while you were talking about the response to tell us something about yourself, I was thinking to myself, what if I were to go to an interview now and someone would ask me that question now? Tell us something about yourself. What would I say? And I think it would be a nice way for me to start. I think I would start with this. I think I would say parenting is probably one of the most difficult things that I've done. And I think I would like to start with that because one, like you said, it's not on my resume, which says that, you know, I'm having issues with parenting. It also says that I am a parent. So I am telling you something about myself, but in a different way. It also tells you that while I've accepted that parenting is a difficult thing I've done, which does
You
mean that
are
I'm working on
vulnerable.
it.
You are vulnerable. Yes, it
So
tells me that you are open to sharing your vulnerabilities. You're an open minded person.
So, for everyone who's joined here today, this is probably a very super, super important point that Anu's brought up because Anu's taken so many interviews and I've taken so many interviews myself. And as recruiters, as people taking an interview, we want to know about you. It's not just IQ all the time. And in fact, the world is changing so much now, right? All interviewers, all recruiters are looking at EQ more than IQ. Are you a cultural fit to my organization? And your college, your education, your how old you are, and not all of that is a part of it, but it's not going to explain to me whether you can fit into my organization. And I think if we can take a little bit of from what Anu said, which is create um, a couple of words of a story around telling something about yourself, I think you can crack that interview. Anu, you agree?
So, I totally agree, Stead. I would like to add here that it is about telling and giving insights into your personality. One, it is also about making yourself memorable. And when do you become memorable? Memorable. Who are the people you remember? Either people who pick your interest, interesting people, or absolutely dead people. So obviously, you don't want to be in that dead category, boring pack category. You want to be amongst those people who are interesting. If you remember when you asked me to introduce, why don't you tell us something about yourself? You coincidentally started the interview with that question, this live with that question. And if you remember, what did I start with? I said, I call myself an idiot. Now, moment I say that in an interview panel, people will have their eyebrows raised. Huh? Idiot? Why so? Because at that
Agree?
point, in this life, probably people are distracted, people are multitasking. But in an interview panel, the entire focus of the interview panel is on you. They want to understand you. So interviews are generally not about elimination. The elimination has happened in the previous rounds. The interview is
Correct.
generally about selection, because the panel, the interviewer wants to select the best person possible as soon as possible and get done with the job.
Absolutely.
Do you agree,
Absolutely.
Ted?
I agree.
Right?
100%.
But if you can make yourself memorable, if you can make yourself interesting by telling an interesting story about yourself, I don't think you can go wrong with this.
Yes. Make yourself memorable. I'm going to use that. I'm going to
Oh,
use
yes.
that as
Oh, yes.
much as I
That's
can.
my
All right.
mission.
So,
That's my mission, reaching another, taking another leap.
very nice. Very nice. All right. Perfect. So, I'm buying the point. Create a story. But how do you do that? How do you train yourself to create? So, we're talking only about interviews, right? And you said
Yeah.
one particular question, which is tell us something about yourself, so we can create a story around my life, what we've done, etc., etc. But storytelling doesn't just stop at interviews or career building. There's storytelling in
Yeah.
daily life. How do you said
Yeah.
storytelling mindset, storytelling attitude? How do you create that? How do you get into that mode that every time someone asks you something, you instantly click into storytelling rather than just answering it in
Yeah.
a few words? How does that happen?
So I have created a formula around it, Stead, and with your permission, I would like to take a couple of minutes to explain that.
Go for
Okay,
it. Formula.
of course, yes, there's a formula, there's a framework to it. And a simple one, a very simple one. You will know why I say it's very simple when I come to it. But before that, I would like to share that when I was reading on storytelling, I was like, yeah, this is just a tool. When I go to people learn storytelling, the first thing they want to know is why should we learn storytelling? And then I had to switch my pitch. And when I switched my pitch, I said, don't learn storytelling, learn the storytelling mindset. And I said this because, again, I come across some author, some storytelling practitioner. I remember, I forget his name now, and he's basically a script writer. And he said that whenever you're presenting an advertisement, a short format story, you have to understand there is a minimum viable story, like there's a minimum viable product. Your stories have to be minimum viable stories. Because if you think that in a short format storytelling, which we usually do in our daily basis, nobody is going to sit and say, come, let me tell you a story and then go on for 10 minutes. No, you have to use stories in your daily communications and make quick points. So the story, he said that minimum viable story is one wherein you don't have to create any foundational setting. Okay, and one which doesn't need a conclusion. It is a conclusion in itself. And when I looked at my body of work, all the literature that I had created for myself through my research, through the inspirations and everything, I came up with this, that there are four types of minimum viable stories that you could tell. And to remember uh, these four types of minimum viable stories, I use the acronym VOICE. It is VOIC. Okay. I took the liberty to change the spelling of voice. So this is VOIC. There is an E also. I'll come to that later. But minimum viable story starts with voice. And voice is all about V stands for values and O stands for origin. If you want to use storytelling effectively, it is very important that you create some common ground with the person you're talking to. Okay? If you want to, or rather, if you want to communicate effectively and have the other person open their mind towards whatever proposal that you're going to give, tell a story that creates common ground. And when you tell a story that creates common ground, there are two simple and short ways to do it. Share stories of your values and the ones, and go with your research. Tell the stories of your values, the ones that are similar to the person who you're telling the story, or create common ground by by finding something in common in your origin. And when I say origin, it is about place, things, interests, or works, places of work, live places where you have lived, areas of interest. If you can figure out some commonalities in their past and in your past, you will be able to create that common ground. So either values or origin or both. If you can tell these kinds of stories, you will immediately have the person open up their mind, because there is a sense of liking there. You create a sense of affinity, and the moment you create a sense of affinity, कभी कभी सात खून भी माफ हो जाते हैं. If I like you, I might just, let go some derogatory remark you make towards me. So your first job is to create affinity by creating common ground, and you create common ground by telling stories of value or origin. Okay. Now, next, it's not just about creating common ground and creating affinity. You really want to get some work done. And you get that work done by telling the story of the impact that you want to have on the world. So when I say, I started creating content and I started doing other stuff and I connected the dots and I figured that storytelling is something that I'm an expert at. And that's my mission. So I'm telling you a story of the influence and the impact that I wish to have on the world or on the client or on my audience, whoever is, in front of me. So that's the story of impact. But then impact remains meaningless until unless I have actually impacted somebody. Something that we call social evidence. And social evidence has to come from your customer or client. So remember, Sted, uh, there was this time when midnight on television, there was this tele shopping network, and they would come up with advertisements like मैं बहुत परेशान था. Remember? Do you
Yeah.
remember that? Have you seen
Yes,
that?
I do. Yes, I do. I have.
Yes.
I have.
They were also stories. There
Yes,
was a client,
I agree.
they're representing a client who could be you or anyone else, and they said मैं बहुत परेशान था. मुझे ये प्रॉब्लम थी, मुझे रात को नींद नहीं आती थी, गद्दा बहुत, मुझे समझ नहीं आया कि मेरे गद्दे में प्रॉब्लम थी. फिर मैं किसी से मिला, मेरे दोस्त ने मुझे बताया कि वाटर मैट्रेस ट्राई करो, और अब मेरी नींद भी अच्छी है, मेरी कमर में भी दर्द नहीं रहता और मैं पूरा दिन खुश रहता हूँ.
Makes
That
sense.
is the story of your customer, your client. So we've covered V, values, O, origin, I, impact, C, clients or customers. So you have your voice. If you use this framework and you have these four stories with you, you can never go wrong in any kind of communication wherein you're trying to brand yourself. Specifically, in influence stories, which is leadership influence, and branding stories, personal branding included, you can career branding included, you can never go wrong.
I love
So that's
voice.
about that's the voice that I work with, and that's the voice that I want. I have a mission like Simon Sinek's Golden Circle has become a thing of conversations across the world. I want this voice framework for storytelling to become that popular and be spread as a message that yes, one has to use voice framework. The moment anyone wants to make use storytelling mindset, they should think about voice framework and they should be able to communicate more effectively.
I see how motivated you are about that. Inshallah, if
Yeah.
God wishes, let's hope that happens. This is beautiful. I'm going to recap for everyone here who's just joined what we've done so far, and what Anu has taken us through today, which is storytelling as a part of your career building and life in general. What does storytelling do? Solves communication problems, and you have communication problems in work, with your boss, with your wife, with your friend. It could be anywhere. A point that I'm going to be taking, and it's a nice thing to print on a T-shirt as well. Make yourself memorable. Tell us something about yourself. If you can make yourself memorable, you're never going to be forgotten in a pile of five. When they have to finally select, you're going to stand out because they're going to remember you for that. And I take that 100%, Anu. And then the most important of today's conversation, which Anu was very nice to share with us because it's something she's working on, but she's already given it out, which is a formula for storytelling attitude or the mindset, the minimum viable story. What is a minimum viable story? How do you decide? How do you choose how to tell that story? And she's broken it down to us beautifully in the form of the acronym of VOICE, which is VOIC: values, origin, impact, and clients and customers. I'm sure there are lots of students who've joined. I can see a couple of them who've joined, and you're wondering, well, if I'm a student and I'm going for an interview, who is really my client or customer? Your client or customer is your panel of interviewers who are sitting in front of you. So if you're going to
Yeah.
deliver to them, you're selling yourself to them at that point that you want the job. So we all have clients. If I'm convincing my son that I'm not going to buy him the Hot Wheels car that he wants because he needs to earn it, I'm negotiating. All right, I'm selling to him as well, and he becomes my client and customer. How can I build a story around that for him? It also is a part of communication issues. Did I sum that well, Anu? Did I miss
Oh, yes,
anything? Anything else you
absolutely.
want to,
Absolutely, absolutely. But I have to circle back to
please?
voice and the question, tell us about yourself. And it's like movie abhi khatam nahi hua hai.
I'm glad.
And voice has a fifth letter instead. That fifth letter is E. And that E is the answer to the question, tell us about yourself. And that E, any guesses what could that E stand for, Step?
I have no idea, but I'm
Okay.
excited. No.
So, yes. So your E is your personal elevator pitch. Now, if you could create an elevator pitch using your values, your origin, your impact, and your social evidence, which is your client stories, you create an elevator pitch, and that becomes one of the most effective answers to the question, tell us something about yourself. And thanks to Shark Tank, now we understand the concept of elevator pitch. VOIC only gives you a framework for creating a personal elevator pitch for your personal brand. But uh, if you have a good elevator pitch, you're bound to communicate the most important message in a memorable way. We still, if we were to steer a conversation around Shark Tank, I'm sure if anyone has watched a full season of Shark Tank, they will remember one or two pitches, which were most impactful. And, they were very interesting. And you're like, Array, yes, they did it in such a nice way. So if you can create an elevator pitch for your personal brand, you will never have to think for 2 seconds before answering the question, tell us about yourself.
I know. I think Shark Tank's a beautiful example because everyone there is coming to sell a new concept, And I believe selling something that has already been sold before is different from selling something completely new. And those guys, they have
Yes.
to really put themselves out. And you're right. Never thought of it that way, but using story to as an elevator pitch using voice. This is brilliant. Anu, thank you so much. Uh, I'm sure there is a lot more that we need to know about storytelling. So, Anu, do you want to point us to a book, a website, or anything like that that we can use and go back and learn more about storytelling?
So there is definitely this book, Stories at Work from Indranil Chakraborty. He is, I'm not sure if you've met him, but he lives in Goa, right? And he gives a book called Stories at Work, and that is the simplest book that I have read on storytelling. So I must have read at least 50 books or 60 books as a part of my research on storytelling. But that book stands out to me because it is one of the simplest narratives to understand. That somebody who is trying to learn storytelling because he's been told to learn storytelling and no personal interest as such, but he knows that, like to live, I have to breathe. So, to create a personal brand, I need to know storytelling. Read this book, Stories at Work, and you will get ideas. You will definitely get ideas.
Thank you. Thank you. That helps. I will surely make that my next book to read. Anu, thank you so much for your time. It's 8:35 on my watch, so we've overshot by 5 minutes, but I want to acknowledge everyone here who's come and stayed for that 5 minutes extra. Thank you so much for coming here. I hope it's been helpful. I'm going to say that one more time: stories at work or that work?
Stories at Work.
At
8
work.
at
Stories at
yeah,
work. Guys, for all those who are
by
interested,
Indranil Chakraborty.
perfect. Anu, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insight. It was very helpful. My takeaway is make yourself memorable. I'm going to try as many times as I can in my everyday conversations with people to make sure they remember me. So thank you so much for that and for your formula. Thanks for your time, Anu. It was a pleasure speaking with you. We, of course, will keep in
Yes,
touch.
it
TEDx
was
is
an
not going to let us go.
absolute pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure. I didn't figure that we've already had a conversation for 30 minutes, 35 minutes, in fact. So, yes, it was a pleasure for me to stead.
Thank you. Thank you, Anu. Thanks for your time. And thanks, everyone, for joining. And we will see you next Sunday, 8 p.m. again.